Ladies and gentlemen, today is July 6, 2016, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 300, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Keenan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to another show. Today we are going to be doing a joint study session on learning about metals, and that's why I'm holding this ice cream scoop, in case you were wondering. And this is the star of the show. This is the star of the show, our good old ice cream scoop, along with our, oh wow, this awesome piece of medieval armor that I found. No, it's just the end of the spoon here. But I'm going to be teaching you guys today how to find things around your house to reference, as well as how to take pictures with your phone. Right? Take good pictures of your phone that then you can bring over here and reference. And we're going to be trying to recreate these materials today. We're going to be studying all the little bits and pieces, little tiny details that go into creating this material. And this is a brand new series, right? Joint study session, which is a nice way of saying, I have no idea what I'm doing. But before we get into today's joint study session, we got to take a look at a very special place, and that is, of course, the lovely Lane. So let's go ahead and pull that up with this cryptic link that's hidden on Facebook, and let's go ahead and begin the scroll. And I'd like to say thank you guys so much for liking the page, submitting your art, and getting featured on the show. If you would like to do the same, just go ahead and type in that tiny URL /KNKL fanart. Go check them out all for yourself. Like the page, submit your art, and get cookies. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into today's tutorial. All right, so first of all, let's just talk. Let's sit down and let's have a talk about spoons and metal pieces, and ways that you can use them when you are trying to find reference, okay? So ideally, the reason why I chose this ice cream scoop is because if you look over here, the way that I lit this is I just set it over top of like a lamp in my room, right? Like this is the light source down here. This is what we call our main light source, right? But then notice how we have all these other external light sources, like or rather this blue light source. These are the windows of my room, kind of letting in that blue skylight from the outside. And then this white light on the side. This is actually the reflected light coming from the wall. So it's very important to, when you are taking your pictures, to understand where all of your light sources are coming from. And that way, when you study this, you can then say, okay, so this is how the lights are going to be affecting my piece of metal, okay? And the reason why I chose this ice cream scoop, of all things, is because it's really nice. It's very spherical, and it shows from all angles how your light and how it's going to create, all these little reflections, so you can see my hand in it and everything. And if I put it close enough, hey, you can see yourself right there. Isn't that awesome? So lots of things that we can learn from a spherical shape. But also, you want to make sure that you get other types of shapes in there, such as like this slightly, you call this like a rounded, kind of like a cylindrical shape. But this is actually a little bit more, this is much more like an armor piece. And that's why I chose this one, because you could easily reference this and turn it into like a pauldron or something. And this one I actually took while I was outside. I just took my phone, right? I'm just taking my phone, laying this thing right down on the concrete, and then I just used my phone, kind of zoomed in on it. Got a nice close-up picture, so that way we can see not only like the main light source, see this big band that goes through the center? This is actually like our skylight. But then as we get over here, you can see that there is actually, specifically on this left side, oh, okay, and we're getting right into this tutorial. So let's just go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and get into it, because I should ideally be like drawing this out as I am talking about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do right here is we're going to extend our canvas out. We are going to extend our canvas out. And let's go ahead and color this like a dark gray. Sure, why not? That looks good. We got to delete that. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And let's begin our study process. Okay. So actually that might be a little bit too dark. Yeah, that looks better. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so I know exactly what I'm doing. Follow me along as I show you how I know exactly how to run an episode about studying metals and materials that I've never done before. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, rather than eyedrop this stuff, right, and then bring it over, what I like to do in these types of cases is I really like to use the eyedropper to like study things. Like I say, okay, well, what is this color that's being used in here? I look at it and I'd say, yes, that's a dark blue. But then I pick it and see, oh wow, it's actually a very desaturated dark blue. it's really nice to pay attention to your hue bar as well as how saturated / desaturated your color is. And then you might look at this. Hey, do you know what this little piece of orange, this orange reflecting in here is? Remember how I talked about whatever is, you can actually see yourself in the metal? Well, a very cool thing that I found out is that the center piece of the metal, so here's a really, actually, you'll probably be able to see it better with the spoon. So take a look at this. So that little black square, that is actually you, right? Looking at the spoon. But notice how when I turn it, right? I turn the spoon. See how you can still see yourself no matter which way I turn it? And that's because on a spherical piece, or rather not necessarily a spherical piece, but when you're working with a piece of metal, so you can even see it down here, right? Whatever pieces are facing towards you, that is going to be, basically you're going to be seeing the photographer or the person that is taking the picture. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, it's something good to keep in mind. If you wanted to get like really detailed with it, you could show like a person in the reflection of the metal or like a small shape that represents a person. But what that actually means, I don't know. It's just something to keep in mind. That's the first thing that I noticed while I was doing this. And it was fun to just say, hey, that's interesting that there's like that hand in there, or this orange shape, right? That actually is my hand with the phone. You can see it holding it there. But then we have something very important down here towards the bottom. And this is the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about. And that is something that I actually know about materials. And that is the materials are actually quite simple to do if you think about it in these terms. So I want you to pay attention right here where you have a giant light shape, okay? You have a giant light shape right here. And then off of that shape, you have what I call the fall off zone. The fall off zone. This is where the light begins to fall off, okay? And then we go into shadow area. Shadow, okay? So here's the coolest thing about materials that I've ever found. And it kind of goes into a similar thing where, have you ever learned or ever seen those books where they talk about drawing a brick wall in a simplified fashion, right? If you were to draw a brick wall in, say, a comic book, you wouldn't go in there and start drawing every single little brick, right? You wouldn't do this and draw a million bricks along the wall. Rather, what you need to do is you just draw a couple bricks. You just draw a brick like this, a brick like that, and a brick like that. And then your mind fills in the rest of it, right? You would say, oh, that's a brick wall. So a similar thing we can apply to photorealism. A similar thing will be applied to this texture. And that is that, do you notice how as we get to the shadow area, as we go in past the fall off area, right? As we pass the fall off, why is that not showing that? Okay, there we go. As we pass the fall off, do you notice how these little scratches and these little like tiny little bits of that which shows our texture, right? The parts that show our texture, all this little noise in here, that too falls off once we hit this area. Now we can still see it a little bit in like, say, where my hand is and here, but do you notice how it's only in areas of change? Only in areas of change do you really begin to see the biggest amounts of texture, right? Whereas all this area, yes, there's subtle differences, but it's almost like a big blob. And that's what I want you guys to keep in mind as we begin our study session today. Is that area, see also over here, look at how the light, this reflected light, as the transition happens, as the fall off happens, that is where all of the texture shows. And then as we get to this area where it's all in shadow, big blob. See, through here, look at all that texture in there. In here, not so much, okay? So, with that knowledge, let us begin. Oh, and I want to show you guys one other cool thing. Okay, so let's say that you take your ice cream scoop and you want to use it for a reference for a certain picture. And so you put it above your lamp and you take a picture much like this one. And then you take it back and you say, oh no, oh, the character that I'm drawing, it has the armor lit from the top or from the side in this case. Well, check this out. You can actually just change your light source by turning. There's another cool thing about having a spherical object is that you can turn your light source. So now we have a light source from the side. Now we have a light source from the top. Now we have a light source from the left. See, that's another really cool thing that comes in handy with using a spherical device. So I think an ice cream scoop is actually really, really handy for this type of stuff. So try it out for yourselves. Let me know what you think. If your ice cream scoop isn't scuffed up enough, go get one, go buy a new one, take it outside, and you can rub it on the gravel. You can like smack it on a tree or something. Get some age on there, right? Just invest in invest in your texture studies. Or you can just use this one that I have right here. Okay, but for this case, let's go ahead and I kind of want to light it from the top right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and get rid of this. And now we can begin the study. Okay, so check this out. I'm going to show you guys a really cool trick. Because I'm starting to get a little more confidence. Now that I have explained everything, I'm starting to get a little more confidence with how I'm actually going to do this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, I want to create a shape, but I don't want it to be a perfect circle. I rather would want it to be almost kind of like a bean shape. Something that we could turn into a piece of armor, okay? So let's start with something like this, and then we're going to apply our learning to that, okay? So let's start with this. Okay, so we have this shape right here. This is the first thing that I want you guys to do. Is you can use, you can do a sphere if you'd like. You can copy it exactly as it is. But rather, what I'm trying to do today is I want to teach you guys how to translate. Because you're not always going to be drawing, right? The character isn't going to always have perfectly round shoulders. It's not going to have an ice cream scoop chunk of metal on its shoulder or on his head or on, there's always going to be different things. So we have to learn how to translate over to here, okay? And that was supposed to look different, but that looks kind of cool too. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do, before we worry about any of the texture or any of the scratches, what we want to do is we want to get our colors on point. Okay? So what I'm going to ask that you do is lay out a mask. Lay out a mask that represents your shape. Then create a new layer over top. Direct your attention down here to layer 6. This is going to be our, let's just call it the color layer. Now what I want you guys to do is I want you to, in the best way possible, try not to eyedrop this stuff. But rather, you can go over here and explore it, right? You can explore it and say, oh, that's interesting that this is like a desaturated like red. Isn't that cool? But rather, I want you to try to get this down without looking at that stuff, okay? And then you can go in and make all your final adjustments, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this dark gray, okay? We're going to start like this. This looks really nice, okay? And let's go ahead and, this is like a really big picture, I just realized. As soon as I started painting that, I heard the freaking CPU like kick in. But anyway, okay, so now we're moving into the, let's start with this reflected light. Now, the biggest thing that I want you guys to be considering as you're doing this is that every single light source is going to hue shift a little bit. Always have that in mind, that your lights are always going to hue shift. Don't just go like, oh, dark blue, and then just go like lighter blue. Always have a slight hue shift in there. And I'm going to go to this, okay? So let's go ahead and lay in a little bit of that, okay? So a little bit of that right there. Let's go ahead and blend that. I'm actually going to down-res this for a second. Oh, wow, yeah, this is like really big. Okay, let's go ahead and drop this down to like 30. That'll be good. And in the meantime, while my computer is working its butt off, oh wait, no, it did it like instantly. Okay, never mind, we're good. So let's continue. In the meantime, let us continue. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so reflected light, one done. One and done. So you're just getting in your general ideas, okay? General ideas for what your light is going to be doing. This light also looks like it's going even more towards yellow and desaturating. So I'm gonna intensify this a little bit, kind of kick it up. And you can start to notice how, oh, isn't that interesting? Like, look at how nice that hue shift looks, even though it's very, very subtle. We're going from this blue, and then see how we're moving towards green? We're adding more like green to it, adding warmness to our blue lights. And already that looks pretty cool. Already that looks really awesome. Okay, now let's go ahead and add in our skylights, right? The lights that are coming from my windows. Let's go ahead and add those in. Well, those look like they're about like this color, right around there. Actually, I'm gonna start with like this kind of medium blue that's in there first. I'm gonna add that in. So let's kind of put a little bit of that in, like that, a little bit of that in, and already you can start to see that this material is beginning to take shape just by putting our colors in. Isn't that interesting? So, and that's kind of what I want you guys to notice today, is that a lot of your materials are going to be told, or rather translated, not translated, that's the word. The information is going to be given to your viewer Not necessarily by putting all the little nicks and scratches in it, right? Metal is not drawn by putting little nicks and scratches all over everything, but rather your choice of colors. Your choice of colors and your choice of lighting. The scratches and all the stuff that happens over on the, like on this side over here, that is all going to be after, right? That is like the final polish that allows it to really look photorealistic. But really what we're doing here is we're choosing colors. Choosing colors and we're choosing lights. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and put in the lighter version of that color, which looks to be about right there. Let's go ahead and drop that in. This is going to become a specular, guys. This is going to become our specular. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit more. I feel like that needs to go more towards blue. Always pay attention to your hues. Drop it in and then ask yourself, does that look correct? Okay, so we're putting in a little bit of our one specular here, and then the other specular is going right there. Okay, cool. Now let's put in our browns and warm colors. There's some browns and warm colors in this, right over here. I would say that those look to be about right there. Okay, now that is going to be right in there. Cool, that actually looks pretty good. Now another thing that I like to do is I like to add in a little bit of that color, and sometimes just the mixture, right? Like say this mixture right here will look better rather than over here. I don't know if you can see the difference, but just like the fall off of your soft brush, sometimes it creates a better color that you like to use. So you see that and you're like, oh, I like that color. Let's rather replace it with that color. Okay, let's put it in there. And then I really like this color in here, this really cool transition right there that was like that really desaturated red. I remember because I cheated. I'm sorry, I cheated. I totally cheated. There we go. Cool. All right, so now we have a really nice set of colors. Now, let's not forget about the most important part, which is our super, super bright rim light, I guess you could call this. Super, super bright rim light. Now, this is going to be blown out. This is what we call getting blown out. When a color or when a light source on your material goes straight to white. But let me show you guys a cool way. I showed you guys this on the Diva piece, but I'm just going to show you again. A really cool way to make your blown out lights look more natural is like this. Okay, and I'm going to create a new layer for this. Creating a new layer for, let's call it blowout. Let's go ahead and lay that in. Okay, so we're going to put some of that blown out light in there. And let's see how that looks. Woo! Man, I got the AC cranked up, but it is still hot in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick that all the way to white. Cool, not bad, not bad. But now we run into a problem. And that is, this white looks nice, but there is something called, there's a really cool effect that happens when your light blows out. And that is, there's almost like a glow that happens around it. And I'm gonna show you guys this as we zoom in. So do you see how we have this white right here, but then as it goes back towards the middle, we go through like this really bright teal. And look at this, it goes through like this blue. So there is a fall off that's happening right here that's very interesting. It's almost like a color dodge effect. And we want to make sure that we have that in our piece, because see what's happening here is we're going from white, and then we're not going to a bright teal, but rather we're just going to like this mid-toned gray. So what you want to do is you want to get in there behind your blown out white, create a new layer, and we'll call this fall off. We'll call this the fall off. And then what I want you to do is select that bright teal. Select that bright teal. Okay, probably right around there. And then what I want you to do is lay that in right behind your really, really bright white light. And then that is going to give us the same exact effect that we were looking for. The same effect! And it looks good. Looks quite good. And yeah, so that is going to make your bright lights look much more natural. It's going to look awesome. And yeah, everybody should do it. Okay? Now, the last thing is that we also have like this grayish fall off. We still have some light in here that is not being accounted for. So let's create another layer behind the fall off. And let's go ahead and add in that gray. This looks like probably right around there. Always be keeping in mind, probably the most common thing that I see people doing wrong is they're not aware of the hue shifts, or they're choosing the wrong hues, right? They're choosing the wrong hues. Understand that all of the colors can be visible in this metal, because the metal is actually very highly reflective. It's very highly reflective. So it's almost, in fact, no, it's completely reliant on what colors are in the room. The metal actually itself doesn't have very much color. Like, you call silver, but what is silver? Is it gray? No, it's not. Silver is merely a reflection of all the colors around it. So yeah, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Okay, cool. So that's looking quite good. Okay, so now what we've done is we have created a nice blend of colors. We've created a nice blend of colors. And now we are ready to begin adding our texture. Most important thing is our texture. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get into that. So this is step one, ladies and gentlemen. This is step one. Now you can breathe a breath of fresh air, because you've gotten the hardest part done. Arguably the hardest part done. I'm going to go ahead and kick this up a little bit more. Oh, this is another cool thing that I also showed you guys how to do in the Diva piece. So I'm taking my fall off right here, and I am changing the hue of it. I just hit Control U, and I'm moving the hue, because I'm saying, oh, that looks okay, but it looks a little bit too blue. It looks strange. Like, I feel like I need to maybe desaturate a little bit, push it towards teal, maybe lighten it up a little bit. Try to find like that happy medium. Try to find that happy medium that you're looking for. And that looks much better. I like that better than what it was. Okay, cool. So now we are ready to begin adding our texture. Okay, now we can have some fun. Now we can start having some fun here. So let's create a new layer, and let's call this layer OP, because now we're technically going into the Overpaint layers. And this is the part where we really start to have some fun. And I'm just going to use my chalk brush for this. But really, I would highly encourage you guys to try out a bunch of different brushes for yourself. I really think that you can get like the best, you can get like, I forget if I actually have these on my website. I think I do. I think I have these textures on my website, because I have like metal scratches and stuff like this. Stuff that you can go in there and like add these types of things, which will probably work out pretty well. But overall, I'm not too big on relying on a lot of brushes. I don't like relying on brushes too much. Rather, I want you guys to understand these shapes for yourself first, so you know what you're going for, and then you can start adding in like your texture brushes. So for now, we're just going to work with our chalk brush, which is a texture brush, I know, but we're going to be using it to paint, right? We're painting in these textures manually first, okay? So we know what we're going for. Okay, so what we're doing is we're studying this. Okay, well, what's exactly happening over here? Well, what's happening is we're having little imperfections that come off of this. Little imperfections that kind of come off of this, this bright highlight. And that's where we're going to start. Okay? Let's go ahead and add in a little bit more of that. That looks good. Cool. And then we're also going to take our fall off, and it looks like our fall off is also being affected right here. Let's go ahead and see what color that is. I'm going to cheat a little bit just so we can make sure we get the right color. Okay? So I'm going to add a little bit of that in. Okay? Paying close attention to all this stuff. Close attention. Okay, add a little bit of that in. That looks good. Add a little bit of that in. Okay? Now, keep in mind what we learned earlier. All of your scratches and stuff is going to look really good on your areas of transition. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually taking these transitionary colors right in here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this really quick. So if you take this block of the metal out, you notice you have this transition from shadow to light. So in this area specifically, all throughout here, is where you're going to be seeing most of the texture, because that's our transition. Okay? So let's go ahead and capitalize on that. So the way that I like to do this is I like to blend it. I like to blend this area by just eyedropping, say, that transition, and I'll start adding in noise, right? Start to add in a little bit of noise. Little scratches like this. And notice the direction of the scratches, right? It looks like a lot of them are kind of going like this, right? You got like little dots down here, little bits and pieces down here. But then notice, see, now we have a transition that has a little bit of texture added to it. And that's what's nice. We're only focusing on this area. We're not adding texture in here, nor here, nor, well, we'll add it here because there's another light source. But just on that transition is where it's most important to add it, okay? Now, same thing over here. Let's go ahead and add in a little bit more light right in here. See, just paying attention to right here. Let's add in a little bit of this. And then the texture is happening in our area of transition, transitionary areas. See, just like that. There we go. Hey, that's actually looking pretty cool. Now, also, there's all these little scratches and nicks, as well as, I think this is just like a little bit of dried ice cream on there that didn't get off of there. But that's also good because that shows like imperfection. It could be like dirt or like a stain on the metal. Let's also make sure that we add that in there. So what I'm going to do is, hey, look at that. Isn't that interesting how this stain, once it reaches this point of the metal, it's actually just that color being blended in. So let's do that same thing. Let's take that color and let's blend it over. Let's blend it right on over. It looks like it's a little bit more desaturated too. Slightly more desaturated. Let's go and add that in. Put those little bits of, those little chunks, those little imperfections in there. And there you go. You're starting to get a good texture. Starting to get yourself nice texture. Now let's not forget about, look at how right on the edge here, it's also almost like a halo effect. Let's not forget about that too. That was something that we actually forgot about. So this is why it's really good to have this stuff up, because then you can get in there and be like, oh, there's actually like this halo that goes around the edge. We don't want to forget about that. Get in there, add it in. Add it in, add in that reflected light, okay? And as that light falls off, you show the texture. Okay? See, isn't that pretty simple once you start thinking about it that way? All of a sudden, materials are not that hard to do. They're not that hard to do because all you have to think about is adding in your light sources, and then as your light sources fall off, you show texture. You show the scrapes, you show the scratches. You're not in there trying to do this stuff. See, here's what I think a lot of people think you have to do. You have to get in there and you have to like start doing this type of stuff, and you're like adding this in all the areas of like shadow, and then you gotta like do this, and then, you know, it's not about that. All you gotta do is think about your texture on the areas of transition. Areas of transition of your lights, okay? And that is by doing this. You have your transition. Take the color on the end of the transition, or even in the center of the transition, and then just kind of move it. Move some of those pieces towards the insides, right? Have a little bit of noise, right? A little bit of noise in there. And there you go, see? Now you've begun creating that texture. Oh, isn't that nice? Hey, that's actually looking really cool. Look at that. Our material is starting to come through on a completely different shape, right? On a completely different shape. Yet we can look at that and be like, whoa, that looks so shiny. That looks so awesome. And it's just chosen by those colors, or that is affected by those colors. Okay, now let's get in there. I want to actually add a little bit of, a bit more of a brighter highlight to this area in the middle. Something like this, a little bit of that. Maybe a little bit more blue. Now here's another cool thing, is that I love being able to put down colors, and then I ask myself, does that look right? Does that particular hue look right? Now if it doesn't, here's the answer to your question, is that oftentimes I found that if you put a color down and it doesn't look necessarily right, it's because it's the wrong hue or the wrong, well, oftentimes it's the wrong hue. You could say it's the wrong hue or the wrong value, and then basically you've covered everything. That doesn't really explain anything. But really, take a close look at this. What is that color actually doing? Well, let's go ahead and eyedrop it. Let's take a look. So we have this, and then we have this. Now what did it do? It went up and to the left. So it desaturated, but did it change hue much? Oh, actually it didn't. It moved slightly towards teal. Whereas what we're doing here is we're going from here to here. See, oh, that's what I did. So I saturated. That's why this looks strange, because over here, we're saturated, to desaturated. Here we went desaturated to saturated. Okay, there we go. We just figured out our own problem. Okay, so what we got to do here is maybe saturate this area just a little bit more. Saturate this just a tad bit more. And then on our light, we move more towards desaturated. Now that's a rule. That's just the general rule that should be followed in almost all cases, is that your lights will almost always look better when you desaturate them, when you lighten and desaturate them. Okay, let's go ahead and put that in there. Let's go ahead and simulate a little bit of this texture that's happening in there. See that? See how I'm just adding texture to the edges? I'm only adding texture to the edges of this piece, putting little nicks and scratches through it like this, right? Not worrying so much about what's on the outside. Okay? Cool, huh? Isn't that awesome? I love it. I love it. Let's go ahead and get that looking good. And I'm sure that as you spend more time on this, because obviously this is just, and I can't spend forever on it, but as you guys just continue putting more detail into this and studying it, it will just become more realistic and more better looking, as we like to call it in the art world. Okay, but really just think about edges, ladies and gentlemen, edges and all that stuff. Edges and all that stuff. Okay, got a little bit of texture coming down here. We can also notice. But still, in general, see how we're treating it as, it's almost like a texture of, it's like a gradated texture. That's what I call it. That's what I was supposed to call it this whole time, gradated texture. I feel like this could be a little bit better up here. Let's go ahead and kind of finish this off real quick. And then we'll call it good, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't get a chance to work on the spoon, but that's okay, because I think this one was the more interesting of the two. Yeah, look at that. We've even got like little bits that are getting picked up over here too. Little itty bitty things over here that are getting picked up. Gotta love that. Gradate that texture just a little bit more. That looks nice. That looks really good. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually very happy with this. I am very happy with how this turned out. A little bit leery at first. But really, I think what is important, guys, is that you pay attention mostly to your transitions. Like, okay, so this is the last thing that I'll leave you with. Because undoubtedly, this is the problem that you're going to run into. Is that you're going to say, okay, well, we need to take this light and we need to add it over... we need to add it over here, right? And let's like add some of the like scratches and stuff. And then you'll have too hard of a transition. The transition will be too hard and it's gonna look unnatural. It's gonna look kind of strange. Actually, I mean, technically that doesn't look too bad. It actually looks kind of stylistic and cool. So maybe that works too. But in general, what you wanna think about is having transitions, right? Let's actually just erase this and notice how much more natural this is going to look. Because you can have that brushstroke in there. But you have to think about it as you're gradating your texture. Have texture in there. In fact, that's probably the best way I could describe it, is you can go in there and add all these little dots. Add all these little dots, crazy little things. But remember, as it moves further away from your light source, you want to gradate that stuff. Less contrast in here. And as you do that, see, now it's going to look much more natural. So if you go in there and start adding all these things and you notice that it's looking kind of strange, I want you to ask yourself, is there too much contrast? Am I taking this color and am I adding it too far down and now it looks like really strange, right? Oftentimes you just need to gradate it. Just gradate it, ladies and gentlemen. And that is going to call it good, or that is going to make it good, and we're going to call it good. And this is actually really, really fun. I love doing this. But let's do a final review. And then we're going to take a question, and then we're going to call it good. All right? So actually, this is a really fun way to do this. I found out just by doing that last exercise. Look at this. I found out another cool way that you could do this. So create a new layer, and let's say you want to add more texture in this. I'm getting so excited I can't even talk anymore. You want to add more texture in here. I would say just go crazy. Just like add a bunch of stuff, use the brush, make it big, add little dots, add scratches like this, add scratches like that, and then go in there with your eraser and lower the contrast. Lower the contrast of what that just did. And look at that. Now you have little itty bitty textures in there, right? Little itty bitty textures in there. I'm gonna add in a little bit more noise in here. Yeah, that looks just so cool. Also, another thing that I will say that helps to make textures look really awesome is having varying degrees of sharpness versus softness. So what I mean by that is, do you notice how there's areas of like this whole transition is very soft, very, very soft. But then also, do you notice how there's all these sharp textures in here? There's sharp, like little scratches in there. And then down here, there's like little grains of, I don't know, vanilla bean or something, whatever this thing was last used for. So the contrast of those two types of texture, or those two types of edges, really helps to make the piece look really cool. So I would say, in the same way, make sure that your textures have nice areas of smoothness, but then don't be afraid to get in there and add areas of roughness. Really, really sharp edges, right? Really, really sharp edges, especially down here. I think it would look cool. Let's have like some sharper edges along this line. Okay, like that. And then as you do that, let's see what that does. See, isn't that cool? So now we're really starting to move into what I would call much closer to photorealism. It's not necessarily like perfectly photorealistic, but I think that's another thing that helps it to look more real, more like real life, is that you're able to distinguish, because in real life we have all kinds of different things coming at us. We have all kinds of different types of textures. We have soft transitions, we have hard transitions. We have little specks of dirt, and we have really soft, like metal, light cascading across the metal. I'm actually having a lot of fun with this. This is really, really fun. I want to add in just a little bit more of this too. So check this out. Let's say we want to add some more light. Add some more light in there, right? Make a nice, easy fall off. Easy fall off. Nice, easy gradation there, okay? Then get in there with your, create a new layer. Get in there, add some texture. Add some scratches, add some scratches. Go a little bit crazy with it. Go a little crazy with it. Add some dots. Add some dots. And really what I'm doing here is it's not necessarily random, because I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, what are these textures made out of? They're made out of lines. They're made out of dots, right? They're made out of dots. So we can do stuff like this. And then we can go in there and we can erase it away. Erase it away like this. Softening the transition, but still keeping that texture in there. Okay? And then we're going to have something like that. Then get in there and also say, okay, let's sharpen some of these edges. Sharpen some of these edges. And there you go. Isn't that awesome, ladies and gentlemen? All right, cool. Now that I have properly flapped my gums and gotten nice and tired, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's move on to our question catapults. All right, today we got a great question coming in from the KNKL IMSI. This one is coming in from Dingo Sniper, and he's asking a very peculiar question. I think this is very relatable to all of you out there, and it deals with exposure. Basically, he's talking about how he's been a member of DeviantArt for many years, posting his artwork, trying to gain exposure, posting on different platforms, and he noticed that he had much more success when posting to Instagram. And he was very polite, and he actually included a TLDR at the bottom. And he says he's gotten a lot more attention on Instagram compared to the 4 years on DeviantArt. And he wants to know why this is. Is there a science behind it? And I'm happy to tell you, Dingo Sniper, that there is, in fact, science behind it. There are numbers behind it. In fact, the numbers being 500 million. How about that? 500 million active users on Instagram versus DeviantArt's, I mean, their numbers aren't exactly public, but I think it's more around the the realm of like maybe 2 to 5 million active users. So it's just a difference in numbers, my friend. And Instagram, because you want to think about it. What kind of people are joining DeviantArt? It's other artists that are posting their art. And it's a great community on its own. But who is on Instagram? Who is discovering images and browsing on Instagram every single day? Everybody that has a phone. Every single person that has a phone has Instagram. I mean, some people out there. I don't use Instagram a lot, but I just got into it because my girlfriend told me to. But it's awesome. Like, I love Instagram. It's so perfect for promoting yourself. I really believe that it is the best way, one of the best ways to get noticed as an artist, is make sure that you're not spreading yourself, not putting all your eggs in one basket. In this case, you can spread yourself out a little bit. Spread yourself out. Go to multiple platforms. You want to post it on the forums. Like if you're making fan art, post on the forum of where you made that fan art. Post it on DeviantArt. Post it on Instagram. And don't forget to tag it too. Hashtags is another thing. I feel like I'm so old because I don't understand hashtags, or I think that they're dumb, or I think that they don't work. I just don't get it. But I do it now because it's like, oh, this is literally how people will discover your art. This is how you get people to discover and browse and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just orders of magnitude difference in terms of actual people, concentration of people that can get eyes on your work. So that is why you've been having much more attention and success on Instagram. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that because it's not, who says it's just for selfies and food, pictures of your food? It's not. It's it's a site for images. It's a site for images and people that are on their phone, right? While they're driving and looking at, pictures on their phone when they're not supposed to, right? Everybody's using their phones and looking at pictures. So use it. Use it to your advantage. And it's just a difference in time. It's just a difference in time. Different sites, who knows, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a different site. And Instagram is going to be the old one, right? Not as many people are going to use that. And people are going to be like, oh, this site is just for posting, I don't know, pictures of your dog or something. But people are posting artwork now and people like that. It's like just because the site is supposed to be used for something or people think it's supposed to be used for something doesn't mean that it can't translate and be used for something else. Don't box yourself in like that. Okay? So I'd say continue, Dingo Sniper. Have yourself a merry old time with that. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, today has been a long episode, and I do appreciate you guys being patient and learning with me today as we studied our metal pieces. If you would like to get this PSD for yourself and dissect all these layers, you can go in and look at all these little things that I did to create this effect here. Go ahead and do it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Click on this picture, go to Patreon, support the show, download not only this PSD, but all the other PSDs from the past. And you guys have a great time with that. Last but not least, I would like to say thank you to my amazing sponsors. Laura Bashir, David Cariello, Megan Gwynn, Ian Crowell, and Matthew Silva. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring the show. You guys are amazing. Love you. And of course, sponsors of the past. Wait, where are the sponsors of the past? Oh, there we go. Sponsors of the past. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring the show. You guys are awesome. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, we're going to end today's show. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys have a great rest of the week. I'll see you next Tuesday where we will be jumping into another material study. And until then, you guys take care. See ya.